Thanks for your patience. A few things we need to get through this morning. I'm joined by the Deputy Commissioner of the SES, Minister for Emergency Services, Jihad Dib, Member for Port Stephens and Minister Kate Washington, Minister for Roads, Member for Maitland, Jenny Atchison. There's a few things we wanted to speak about and we'll take questions. Firstly, obviously the weather system that we've been dealing with, that's brought all of these storms, has moved out of the region. However, there are still towns that are isolated, particularly on the mid-north coast. 15 at last count, although in the last few hours we expect a few of those towns to no longer be isolated and connected again to roads, which is good. However, we're fully aware that there are substantial communities that don't have road access. They're being serviced by the SES, the Rural Fire Service, Pole, Air, the VRA and many other government agencies that are determined to help those communities through a difficult period. There are 24 emergency warnings still in place, and we continue to remind people to look at their app, the Hazards Near Me app, listen to the media, listen to emergency broadcasts. I know that there's blue skies at the moment, which is good news, but we're asking you to look at your app rather than the sky before making a decision. The concern we have at the moment is road slippage, landslides. The SES police have got the best and latest information, and obviously, now that we're through the worst of the weather, we want people to be safe during the clean-up phase. Just shows that there's a clear understanding of emergency responses during these natural disasters. Unfortunately, we've got more and more of them. First priority, of course, is to save people in imminent risk of death. The next priority is to supply food and shelter, and the last priority is the clean-up effort. And I know that there's, of course, going to be frustrations when someone's worldly goods have been swept away or their business has been smashed, but everyone, of course, would appreciate as well that we've got to make sure that the third priority doesn't jump in front of the first one. And when you've got crews that are affecting over 600 flood rescues in the last 3 days, that must be the priority. As floodwaters recedes, we can move into the clean-up phase, and we're seeing resilient communities do just that. Before I hand over to my colleagues, I did want to speak about Taree. We were in Taree not long ago. It's a community that's been hit incredibly hard, but they're resilient and tough, obviously sad about what they've had to go through both in 2021 and these latest floods, but I think it's best typified by their local MP, Tanya Thompson, who's incredibly tough, very resilient local member of parliament, very forthright in what her community needs, but has been in there cleaning up shop after shop, helping her local community since the storms hit. We want to make sure that community can get back on its feet as soon as possible, and we want to go with them on that journey. I know local MPs in the area, Jenny and Kate, along with our colleague Janelle Saffin, the Minister responsible for the clean-up effort, also the member for Lismore, who's gone through, if not as bad, certainly very difficult emergency situations in the last few years, will be up on site soon, hopefully tomorrow, I think tomorrow, to help with the clean-up effort. We know this is a mammoth task ahead of us. We thank people for their patience. We want to particularly acknowledge the enormous courage that the local community has had to exhibit in the last few days. I said this yesterday, but I think it's worth repeating. We would have had hundreds of deaths if it wasn't for the bravery, the courage of emergency service workers in the last 72 hours. They've been incredible in the circumstances, but we need them. We would be in huge trouble without them. They saved a lot of lives. I'm going to pass over to Jihad and then the Deputy Commissioner.
Thanks so much, Premier, and good afternoon, everybody. And just to add on from that, as the Premier said, we've just come back from Taree, where we got to see firsthand that next phase, and most significantly to the spirit of the community. And I too want to add my voice to the efforts of the local MP there, Tanya Thompson, who has been advocating hard but also been with the community. And in times like this, what you really see is the mettle of people, and we're seeing that up and down the whole Hunter region. We're seeing a whole joined-up approach of government agencies, non-government agencies, emergency services, and of course just every single person wanting to make a difference. As the Premier has said, we're now moving towards a different phase of this particular incident. The incidents themselves are starting to drop down in terms of number, and they're changing in nature. Pleasingly, there's been a lot less flood rescues that are required, but we move now into other forms of incidents where people may need support in terms of getting back into their home, in terms of assistance with the clean-up, but also in terms of assistance with other essential items. And to give you one example, last night was an incredible Australian first drop-off of medicine to a home that desperately needed it, had been cut off by the floods. And as a result of that, we used the latest technology, including drones, to be able to drop medicine, urgent medicine, to families. Now that's what happens when you stay connected. That's what happens with a different approach that we've undertaken, where we're looking up at everything that people can do. In terms of other things, of course, that there are concerns, our ministerial colleagues and all of our state colleagues are working together. I know that our local MPs from the area have been in discussions with the Minister for Agriculture about the sports that's available today. And as one example, I know that there are fodder drops in areas, in agricultural areas, that have been affected by this. What we are seeing is that transition to the next phase, which is the clean-up. We've seen inspired efforts today of the community cleaning together, working together, our emergency services working with the community, volunteers from interstate coming in and supporting. And I think these are the incredible stories to take. From this clean-up, of course, we move into the recovery phase, and I know that Minister Saffin, who will be up here tomorrow, will continue with that in that really seamless approach. We are really clear about this one thing. We are so grateful to everybody and all of the efforts they've made. Whether you're a volunteer emergency service, whether you're a paid emergency service, whether you're a member of the community who just saw that your neighbour needed some help and you went in and helped. And that's a great Aussie spirit, and we appreciate it for that. The Premier said that we're here for the long run, we'll be here for the long run. All of our colleagues will do it together. This is a strong, resilient community, and we'll stand shoulder to shoulder with them. I'm going to hand over to Deputy Commissioner Daniel Austin to give us the SES update.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, everybody. As you're well aware, the significant and coordinated response continues right across the mid-north coast. 148 warnings stand current as we speak. However, we expect that number to change very quickly this afternoon, as one of our priorities is very much about getting people back to where they came from. Whilst we will work as fast as we can to make sure that those warnings are reviewed as quickly as possible, we do so with the number one priority being safety. We have got through this incident so far with a relatively low casualty and death toll, and we do not want that to change as we move forward. So we will take a safety first approach before we start to remove those warnings, and we will ground truth those to make sure people get in quickly. The prioritisation of today's effort is very much around clean-up, as you heard, damage assessments, resupply, and in many cases getting medical supplies and getting people out to medical appointments and the like, and as well reviewing those warnings. Whilst the river levels continue to drop, the reality is the countryside will take some time to drain, and that means there is still risk. So we are asking that people very much monitor their circumstances, as you've heard, connect with the Hazards Near Me app and stay current with warnings as the situation continues to change. We estimate there will be around about 10,000 properties that will require damage assessment. That will take a significant amount of time. We have more crews coming in today to continue that work and move through the areas, and we will do that as quickly and as safely as possible. At the moment, there are in excess of 2,400 emergency service volunteers and other personnel on the ground. There are 9 aircraft in operation, including drones. There are some 500 vehicles and vessels, as well as the members of the community, and we send our heartfelt thanks to all of those people that are there. For people and members of the community particularly requiring resupply or assistance, we ask you again, 132 500, to contact us so that we can get to you. If we don't know about it, we struggle to help. In the last 24 hours, there's been 864 incidents across the zone. 44 of those were flood rescues. Still means we need to take care, we need to not drive into floodwaters, and we need to look after ourselves. Again, we thank all our emergency service partners, and we thank the community for the support that they've given us over the last few days. We know this is a long road ahead, and we are here to stay with you. Thank you.
Thanks. Jenny Aitchison, Minister for Roads. There's some good news on the horizon for freight and transport routes. The M1 is looking to be reconnected from 6 o'clock tonight. It will be a single lane in either direction. The amount of garbage and debris that is on the roadway from the floods is extensive. Transport crews have been working relentlessly to try and clean it up, but they'll only be able to open one lane, and there will be removal happening in that other lane. So we need people to really comply with those restrictions for the safety of the workers who are doing that work. We've also had Maritime up in Taree. They're looking at the rivers and right across the state to look at what needs to be done there. I've reached out to mayors in those LGAs that have been affected, so the 19 LGAs, the mayors, the general managers and the local members, to really give them some assistance in terms of connecting that recovery that we know is ahead on the road network. The road network's taken a real bashing in this event and it will need significant assistance. Transport has got, since the 2022 floods 3 years ago, we've stood up a dedicated response unit for resilience and emergency recovery. We are really moving ahead with that funding of recovery. We've quadrupled the rate of money going out to council, so we know that we are well prepared and our systems are much better than they've been in the past. I want to give a big shout out to all of the crew from Transport in Maritime and all of the other emergency services who've been working so closely together with on this recovery and this response. It's been really important to see, and from my own community here in Maitland, the good news is also that Testes Hollow reopened this morning, and we know that that means that Gilliston is not isolated, which is a really good outcome for them. But keep complying with all of the directions around traffic. Do not go into floodwaters. If there are speed restrictions around, it's really important that you comply, because there will be people cleaning the road so you can use it, and you need to make sure that you are keeping them safe as well. Thank you.
And we're all happy to take questions. Yes, sir.
Premier, there's been about 10,000 homes which have been damaged.
Yeah.
Will the state government implement a buyback scheme in areas that have flooded multiple times?
Look, I can't promise that. We are going to work with the local community and the local mayor about resilience in the township. That's hugely important. But I have to assess what the flood damage is, what the likely impact has been. There's been different programs that have been operating in the Northern Rivers. Some have worked better than others, but I obviously don't want to replicate a program that hasn't delivered the kind of resilience that towns in the Northern Rivers had hoped for down here. And we need to make sure that whatever is approved for the mid-north coast and the upper areas of the Hunter region works. That's going to take a little bit of time. We said from the beginning we want to walk this journey together with the communities on the mid-north coast, and that means that we're here for the long haul. But I've seen these programs, even with the best of intentions, be implemented and then not actually work or apply to just a small number of people. All the money runs out before it can actually make a difference in the community, and we're determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past, given we're having more and more of these natural disasters.
Premier, when will the hardship grants begin and how can people access them?
It's likely to be on the Service New South Wales app. I was hopeful to have a date or a time when they'd be operational today, but unfortunately I don't have that. I know that it sounds reasonably straightforward to have it up and running, but unfortunately it's not. And when you've got such a large number of people that are accessing this payment, we want it to be seamless. And we want to make sure that only those who are eligible for the payment can get it. That takes a few days in terms of the technology and the system. We saw the same thing with Alfred, and we saw the same thing with other natural disasters. It won't be long, but it's not today.
Some Taree business owners are confused about the support that they're going to be able to access. They say communication hasn't been great from the government. How are you planning to communicate with people directly to make it easier for them to access help?
Look, a few things. Firstly, we haven't announced business support grants yet. There's a reason for that, and that is the floodwaters have only receded, particularly in Taree in the last few hours, and we want to make sure that we've got damage assessment and the Reconstruction Authority is on the ground to assess what's best for them. Now, I'd love to have this all sorted in 24 hours. I'd love to have it done within 12 hours of the floodwaters receding, but I have to manage expectations here, and based on past practice, we are shortening the period in which help, particularly help to reconstruct a community, comes in, but it's not within a day. It's not even within 2 or 3 days. It's going to take time. When it comes to communication, obviously we've been front-footing communication about evacuations and emergency rescues. And as I said in my opening address, after Lismore, the SES and emergency services worked very hard at having a pyramid or an order of precedence when it comes to the emergency response. Say it again, but I think it's important. The first one is saving lives, particularly those at imminent risk of death. Next, food, shelter, accommodation, particularly evacuation centres. And now we move into the clean-up phase. And as we move resources from one step to the other, it does take a little bit of time, but I think the public would accept that that's the right order in which to triage this disaster.
Premier, there's been an incident in Maxfield, shots fired at police and then a siege. What's your response to that, happening at a time of a flooding emergency?
Look, I'm not going to offer a running commentary on an ongoing police situation other than to say it's a reminder of how lucky we are to have New South Wales Police, what a difficult and dangerous job it is, and I'm thinking about those officers involved at the moment.
The family of a woman who died in floodwaters has claimed a police officer led her into that situation. Is that true, that a police officer guided her into floodwaters?
Look, I can't speak to it. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know. I don't know the circumstances. I understand that the family involved want answers. There will be a full investigation. I'm not prepared, in the absence of an investigation, to condemn the police or the police officer involved. That's a heavy burden for a young officer to take, particularly without an investigation taking place. And when you've got a natural disaster and a heightened emergency with our emergency officers, including police, having to deal with hundreds of events, I'm just not going to do that today. I understand the heartbreak of the family involved. I would never want to say anything to add to their burden today. They're obviously going through a terrible, terrible time, but I think in the circumstances it's right we have an inquiry and an investigation, and I'm just not going to put the boot into a police officer at this point. I don't know what happened.
A man who was missing has now been located. What happened there? Was he ever in trouble in floodwaters? Do you know?
Yeah, the circumstances, the only bit of information I have is that he's found, and given the bad news that we've had over the last 3 days, it's a little bit of good news.
Premier, do you have any further information about the 80-year-old man who was found burnt in his car?
I don't. I have to wait for police.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.